Dawgs. I don't want to go through that again, so how do I get better at it? And I've just stayed with it. And, I have this conversation with my wife so frequently is people view what you and I do, we coach a game. That's all we do is we show up and we coach a game. But people don't really know what all goes into coaching that game. And, you hit on something earlier that I always talk about is I'm a massive relationship builder. I guess that comes back to it's about the people that are around you. And those relationships that you're consistently forging, consistently working on, at the end of the day, that's part of what we do.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. Another week, another episode, another opportunity of learning. I'm glad you could be part of the episode and the podcast, and I hope you continue to take away and learn as much as possible. Continue jotting things down in your journal, continue to reflect, continue to process, continue to coach, continue to take things away within your delivery. But I hope the podcast can help you with everything that you need and that you can continue to learn along the way as much as possible as well. I'm very lucky to have an amazing amount of guests who appear on the podcast, and this week's guest is Shaun Soderling. It was great to have Shaun on the podcast, whereby we spoke about much, and there is so much we can delve into. But as Shaun likes to refer to himself, and something which I really want to touch upon and highlight, he is the purveyor of positivity. I absolutely love that nickname and the way that he portrays himself. I loved his positive energy, and I loved the way he spoke and came across, especially when we're in two different countries and talking across camera to camera and having this across a Google Meet as well. So it was great to speak to Shaun, and it's great to get his insights, the way that he processes things, the way that he thinks, how he takes this into his delivery, how he supports his players, supports his team, and supports his coaching staff. We talked about recruitment and how this may look in terms of an induction program, how he wants to support and work with his players, what he wants to give back to them, and how they may want things to look as well, and how he incorporates this to ensure that they have the most positive energy and positive opportunity whilst amongst his program. It was great to speak to Shaun because I love this quote from him as well. The dream job is what you make of it. And it just shows the energy and time that Shaun puts into his job, how he reflects, the way that he works with his players, what he wants to put in, and really the outcomes. It's not about, having the goals for the highest jobs with the aspirations to be the next Barcelona manager or Real Madrid, etc. But the dream job is what you make of it. The amount of time and energy that you put in, how you enjoy it, those relationships that you build, the key outcomes, the takeaways, the time that you spend within it, the moments that you enjoy, and whether at the end of your life whereby you retire or you're at the end of it whereby you can look back and just know that everything that you've done has come to a close. But if you can stand there, sit there, or think about, that time that you're in that post and the amount of time that you put into it, we spend more time with the people that we work with than our families. So if Shaun can look back and be like, do you know what, this was the dream job and I enjoyed every moment I put into it. And if you can do the same as well, then you've really achieved that life, and there's so much you can take away and be happy for there. Now, we also went on to speak about long-term thinking in football, and that is long-term thinking, which I've just touched upon there. So if you can think about long-term thinking, where you'd like to go, the dream job, the outcomes, the support, what you'd like to do within it. It doesn't always have to be coaching. It might be backroom staff. You might move into assistant coach. You might be a director of coaching, director of operations. You may be an analyst. You may be a commentator. You may be podcaster, or wherever the technology may go in the world, you may end up being involved in some way. However, long-term thinking is on and off the field. You're thinking of your players, you're thinking of your tactics, your formations, your framework, your terminology, your guidelines, your processes, how you recruit, how you develop players, how you develop programs, how you give back to the programs, what the institution wants, adaptability, and there's so much that really comes into long-term thinking. Now, this is quite a broad and general quote and context which I'm talking upon, but whilst you listen to the episode, you can really delve into what Shaun really brings across here and his valid points in terms of that. Now, I love this quote as well, the foundation shaker. I'm not going to give too much in terms of that, but you can listen to that around minute 12. Now, take and listen to that of what you will. There is so much you can really consider, and there is a great perception of it. And as we always talk about, his perspective whilst on the podcast. So really consider what he's talking about and how you could utilise this and maybe take it away yourself. We talked about goals and national championships in terms of what he does as a head coach of Brescia women's soccer and how he really works with his team. We then talked about role changes, people, strategies, and how he interlinks this within his delivery as a head coach and the way that he works with his players. I love this, hashtag B2B. A great quote maker, a great purveyor of positivity. B2B is build to believe. And that is exactly what Shaun has as his cover photo on his Twitter. I must say the quality of his photos is some of the best I've ever seen in terms of the coaching world so far. And I love what he puts out there. But this B2B, build to believe. Something so simple, but something so powerful and impactful. Something that can be reflected upon each day and how players can really take that away as well as the coaching team. How do you build that belief? How do you achieve belief? How do you inspire belief? How do you build your aspirations towards it? What do you want to believe in? How are you going to go about believing it? There is so much to really consider there. And that is really something that you can take away and something to really listen out for, and how you can create your own slogan, readjust it, what your message is, what your values are, how you really want to portray this, how you want to give something back to your players, and if they're going to leave your program without having to, display everything or to, write everything down or to display every, point which your program delivers or what you do as a coach. Just a simple message whereby they can repeat that to someone or go out and say that to someone in terms of their reflection or their time can be really so powerful. So that's something that may with them for life. That may be something that they may take in and give to their kids, or something that they may take into their coaching or their professional world. And there's so much within that they can have. Now, Shaun is aka the relationship builder. Someone who obviously utilises that positivity, that belief, his formations, his strategy and his people to build those formations, to form them, and that long-term thinking of how it all builds together and how he manages his teams and where he's going. It was great to speak to Shaun, and there is so much within this episode that I want you to take away. Continue to add to your journal, continue to take away, continue to build on your notes, continue this reflective journey and this learning. It's so great to speak to so many wonderful individuals on the podcast, and everyone that I see, and by the time I get episodes out, it's great to see their continued journey and what they share across their socials. Check Shaun out, please do, Coach Soderling. It is wonderful to see his posts and what he's doing. The podcast is sponsored by Humble Gifts, a fantastic company providing bespoke and personal gifts, especially to you, based in South Wales. They are a company which is building but bespoke and true to its nature. You can have any design, any idea that you like turned into something in reality. Whether that's mugs, mats, pens, pencils, notepads, doormats, cups, key rings, chains, anything. The list goes on. You can check them out on Etsy, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. Be sure to get in touch with Kira and she'll be happy to support you. Now, it is great because the podcast features across so many social media websites, and this includes Twitter, LinkedIn, Spotify, Podcast Addict, YouTube and Anchor, as well as TikTok. It is great as the podcast grows and hits these social media marks, but don't forget to drop that like, drop that follow, drop that comment and that subscribe. It is really appreciated. You can check the podcast out on Twitter, which is @TRC_podcast_. I'm Anthony_Luca96, and this is the Reflective Coach Podcast. The follows, the drop of subscribes, the comments are really appreciated. So please make sure that you do. You can definitely check it out across YouTube, Spotify and Anchor. But please, please, please drop those subscribes and those follows. It is helping the podcast grow massively. Continue to take away, continue to listen, continue to enjoy this week's episode and capture the end of your week with this belief. Thank you for listening. This is Coach Luca on the Reflective Coach Podcast. I hope to see you all soon, but don't forget to keep checking out the socials for more and engaging and interacting. I really appreciate your time as always, but this week's episode is Shaun Soderling, the purveyor of positivity. Thank you from me and enjoy. Alright, no problems. We're there in the end. It's not a problem. How are you anyway? You alright?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm currently battling a little sinus infection and allergies, but for the most part, I'm doing okay. It's the last day of classes here, so just trying to get through some stuff for today, and then my family's got the day off, so I'm going to go back home here with them in a little bit and kind of hang out for the day.
Sounds nice, especially ahead of the weekend, which is always good, especially the breakdown.
For sure. I got a good friend of mine getting married tomorrow, so I gotta figure out what I'm wearing for that. I still don't know yet. I've had some time to prepare, but we'll get it figured out.
Hey, I bet you're all prepared when it comes to the football pitch and the team, etc. But when it comes to fashion choices, they're last resort.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who would agree with you on that, because I'm one of those, like, I don't care, I'll just wear whatever. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people who would agree with that statement.
Fab. How's your week been overall? Busy, or is it just winding down now for you?
Winding down a little bit. Well, I say that, like, I'm always busy no matter what. So it's just for this specific week, yeah, we're winding down a little bit, but I got a couple of spots, that I got to go recruit at this weekend, and I'll go check that out before or after the wedding, and watch some games, and then spend the rest of the week with the family before getting back after it again next week.
Sounds good. And when it comes down to that recruitment then, is there sort of a synergy between what you're looking for and then what the team's looking for? Or is it more based on what you, or is it based on what the team? Is there sort of a cohesion between that, or is it sort of dictated in one certain way?
I think that we obviously have a style of player. I don't even want to say style, but just a prototypical, like, this is what a Brescia soccer player looks like to us. And we do everything we can to find the players that match that. Just because of when we got here 3 seasons ago, we knew we had to do things in a different way. And so for us, recruiting wise, it's just looking for those players that, 3 years ago when we said, okay, what's our roster going to look like to us? It's just finding the players that match those characteristics, and match those qualities too.
And what does that sort of profile look like for yourselves then?
Number one, in the grand scheme of things, is high character. If you're not a good person, it's going to be very hard for you to play for us. I think with good character, good character comes with quality. Someone may not be, the all-conference player, but when they've got high character, their quality is going to be all right, and they're going to be able to produce for you, and they're going to give you everything that they got. For us, we try to keep it simple. High character, high quality. Anytime that we get a name, we do our research on the kid and talk to coaches and schools and things like that, and again, because what we're trying to do here is so much different than what they've done before. We got to make sure that we're getting the right people, because for the change that we've had in our program since we've been here, it's taken a buy-in from the players who we inherited, but it's also taken the buy-in from the players who have decided to come to Brescia. So I think when you bring it down even further into like roles on the field, we do have like 4 or 5 boxes that we want each role to be able to check off. And if they have 4 out of 5 checked off, it's like, okay, well, can we teach them the 5th one? Or if they have 2 out of 5, can we teach them 3 of those 5 over the time that they're here? So, it just really depends on your role and what we're looking for. But at the end of the day, it's all about bringing in good people.
Absolutely, and it sounds like that change management process, has taken over that course of 3-year period, and it's instilling that philosophy, what it looks like, how this is going to look long term, and it's difficult to sort of, when you are at that starting point, to go, we're going to do this, we're going to change this, because people are apprehensive towards it, and then they're a bit reluctant. So when you're at this point now, 3 years later, where you are getting the right people, it's just about building towards what that might look again then in 3 years, and overall that strategy might change, and it's a good place that you're in right now to sort of keep building and moving forward. But at the initial start of it must have been quite a difficult process to sort of commence.
Yeah, and it's been, I always say, like, it's been very stressful, but it's been worth it. To see this complete turnaround that we've had. It's a testament to the players that stayed and bought in, assessments of the players that are coming here now. We're bringing in kids that 3 years ago would have never looked to come here. So it's really a testament to those players and what they are doing that's causing people to take notice of us. But, at the end of the day, we've got players that, I am very long-term thinking. And like our core of our team was a group of sophomores from this year. They were kind of like the first group that I brought in. And we know that we've only got them for 2 more years. So for us, our 2024 class is, we're not looking to replace those players for when they're seniors. We're looking for players to come in 2024 who are going to be those transitional players, who are going to kind of sit behind, learn from those girls when they're seniors. So that way when they graduate, it's not us, rebuilding or whatever. We're just reloading because we've got kids in who got playing time. They understood their roles. They understood how we play. I think it's going to make for a pretty smooth transition for us going into 2025.
And it sounds good in terms of having those players and, that sort of transitional players. I like the concept of that and supporting the players that are coming through, because it just builds upon what you're trying to instill and build and create that pathway and plan. Because sometimes players are recruited into something, and although they're part of something that might be long term, realistically, there's that short-term thinking like, we're going to have a player for this year, we'll assess them at the end of the year, we might release them, we might re-sign them, especially over here in the UK. So then a lot of players end up dropping off and they're not fitting part of the philosophy, or a philosophy might change, etc. And then it's difficult then because it's that constant recruitment process and it's constant stop-start, and it affects the players. But in that sense, it sounds like more of a transitional process that is supportive of the players rather than a process where the players have to fit.
Yeah, I believe you have to have a core for a few years, and we were able to do that, like I said, with the first class that I brought in. And now it's, like I said, it's dawning on us that we're only going to be able to coach them for another 2 years. So now it's, okay, we got to get another core to build off of. And what that's allowed us to do is when we bring those cores in, after for that first year, kind of seeing where things go. And then it gives us a little bit of an auditing that we're like, okay, hey, we're missing this. We need to add this in. This person does well, but I think they might move over here better, so that means we're going to have an opening here. So just it's that long-term planning and thinking. It's so funny because if you ask my wife, I'm not much of a long-term thinker, but with soccer, that's all I think is long-term. I think of long-term success. I think of long-term goals that I want to reach. And that was something to where I think the stability piece in this, every 4 years bringing in like a core that you can build around for 4 years sets up that stability for the program.
And it's great that you're creating that sustainability and stability for the program in terms of, the pathway that you're creating, the players that you're bringing in, the support that you want to give them. And if you're planning long term in football, as you say, then, you've got that scope of what you want to see in the next 2-3 years, what you want to instill, what you want to inherit, how this may look in terms of staff progression. And then it's really supportive and brings around that overall cohesion then. But in terms of that long term thinking, which is really, great to have, and at times it's difficult because we want to do it as best for the team, as you say, and the best for the players. But then you're doing it for yourself in that, because you might go, all right, I wanted to be an assistant coach at this year, and then I want to be a head coach, and then I might want to be a pathway director, for example, or I might want to go abroad. And when you are thinking long term like that, is it hard to sort of correspond your own motivations personally and long term to the project you're doing now?
Maybe in a way. So I've been coaching college now for about 10 years. And I can remember my first year of coaching college, talking about the dream job. And we even had to sit down and our staff and what's your dream job? And like, what can we do? What can you do to get there? And when I said my dream job, I kind of got laughed at, was told like, you'll never get that. So I just kind of just forgot about a dream job and was like, okay, maybe the dream job is just where you're at. So as time went on, I think I've developed the thing of the dream job is where you make it. It doesn't have to be a high profile school. For me, I'm fairly lucky that this campus is only 40 minutes from my driveway. So, I did have to uproot and move my family to be able to come here. So I think I could see where, now that you put this, I feel like I'm sitting on a psychiatrist's couch. I could see where the long-term thinking for the program can get in my own personal, I guess, long-term thinking. Because I am so much, one of the things we talk about here is being in the now, focusing on the current moment that you're in, not looking forward. And so I could see where my devotion, to the team could get in the way of me thinking about my own. So yeah, I just think it's I could see that now that I've thought about it. But at the end of the day, this is where we want to be at. This is where we want to do it, because we've come into a program that was known for its academics, wasn't known for its athletics, and within 3 years we made the conference tournament for the very first time in school history. So it's I like it, especially like when others call it a project, which I know over in Europe is a big thing when a team comes in, because my favorite team in England, that's what they talk about all the time, is a project that drives me crazy. But I could see where I'm one of those, like, I see the project through. And if you look at my career, I've never went to a team that's coming off of winning a championship. I've always went to the teams that have to rebuild. Or, we call it foundation shaking. We just got to go shake the foundation up a little bit. So, we still have yet to, we've yet to reach where we wanted to go. I know that we made the conference tournament for the first time, and that was a big thing for our players. But ultimately, at the end of the day, our goal is still to play for a national championship down in Orange Beach, Alabama.
And that sounds incredible. And I'm just literally noting down all the things that you're saying, because there's so many interesting concepts there that I really like. And I love that one quote you said, "The dream job is what you make it." And that is something that I really love as a quote. And those foundation shakers, I love that as well. And it's great to hear what you're doing long term and where you're currently at. And when you said, your favourite team in terms of that project, then it's hard to think of the team in England, because there's so many of them which are classing as a project. So it could be, the United project right now with Ten Hag, could be City, could be Chelsea, could be Newcastle, could be Arsenal. So which it might not even be one of those. So which one's your favourite English team?
It is Chelsea. It is Chelsea. I do have to preface it, is the very first Chelsea game I ever watched was the Champions League final against United. And I showed up to a friend of mine's house to watch the game, and everybody had on Manchester United shirts. And I'm kind of one that I like to go against the grain a little bit. And I knew who John Terry was. He's one of my favorite players ever. I knew who Frank Lampard was, knew who Didier Drogba was. And also, I really like the color blue, too, so it was a no-brainer for me. So I always tell people, my very first game to say, like, hey, I'm a Chelsea fan, is probably one of the most embarrassing games as a Chelsea fan until this season, because this season has been embarrassing. So, yeah, that's the thing that I've really taken from English football, hearing about these projects. And, I love the, the Sunderland Till I Die series. I'm getting ready to start Welcome to Wrexham. I like seeing, even at the pro level, how this stuff is changing and what are they doing when they're coming in. Because it'd be different if it was like I never watched the one on Prime about City. Because I'm just like, they can spend $3 billion every year and be really, really good. But I love watching the Sunderlands. I love watching these, I don't want to say lower level teams, but these little bit bottom tier teams, and how are they growing. Obviously, here in the States, like, Wrexham is huge over here now. Obviously because of the Ryan Reynolds and Ramadani effect, but we don't have promotion and relegation here. So when those two are doing these videos about, like, we're going to get promoted and our team's not been promoted in a long time, people here, like, buy into that. My mom is not I wouldn't say that she has a team, so to say, that she supports, but she's become a Wrexham fan. She does travel a lot for work. She actually just got back. She's been to Norwich a lot in the last couple of months. And it's so funny to her that their hotel is attached to the stadium for Norwich City. And she's like, and I've never met anybody who actually likes Norwich. which I say, we got Josh Sargent there, so we got an American boy, but I again, those projects are things that when I started coaching about 20 years ago, I never realized that there was an actual term for what I was doing. I just thought I was going to a team to improve them, to help coach, and give them the ability to see how quality they could be. But these last few years, it has been, I guess, labeled a project because you are stepping in and trying to turn things around.
And on the back of that, then, with the Wrexham success, it's great that it's building across in America, and that they're doing great things in terms of that platform. And there's so much that they can try to achieve with that club, and it's great how they do that across international levels as well now. And I think it's a great hype that they've built up for pre-season already in terms of going to the States, in terms of the teams that they've lined up already, trying to build on top of what they've done. Then the good buzz about going into next year, and it's really exciting. And it's hopefully Chelsea can have that good vibe back as well at one point. But what I have seen is
if they were smart, they would just make Emma Hayes the coach for both teams, because she's the best in the world, and I think that she could handle the men's side if she really wanted to. But that's just my own opinion.
It'd be interesting to see whether, because she's been linked with the job a few times, and they've been on about her stepping in. And I know she was interviewed for the Wimbledon job many years ago. But it would actually be interesting to see if she would come across to the male side and how she would do in that sense. Because we get a lot of males which go into the female side, but we've never actually seen a female come over to the male side yet.
Yeah, and it's happening here in the States a little bit. There's a lot of I've got a couple of friends that they coach men's college teams. there's not too many. Really, kind of the most famous one right now is I give a shout out to Julianne Sitch at the University of Chicago. Stepped in as a head coach for this men's team, went undefeated and won the national championship in her first year with the program. So it's really cool to see. A friend of mine, actually the podcast that I do, my co-host Nick Rizzo always says the ball doesn't care how old you are, and I always take it one step further and say the ball doesn't care what you are. It's a game, and do you love it, and can you play it? But I think we are starting to see, so my daughter plays for Racing Louisville from the NWSL, plays for their academy program. That's my big shout out to them. That's where my grassroots and the player development and pathway things really kind of connect now. And they have a good amount of females who are coaching the boys' academy teams. And it's so cool to watch. If my daughter's training, I'll watch her train. I kind of really watch the whole complex. And when I'm watching these boys train with these female coaches, I mean, it's no different. And they are doing a really, really good job with them. And I just think, there was the rumor after Jill Ellis left here, that she was going to move into the men's side and coach professionally and whatnot. She had some opportunities. But I do think that if anybody could do it and be successful, I don't want to say not be successful, but I think if anybody could do it and that transition would be smooth, it would totally be Emma Hayes.
Yeah, she's so relentless in terms of what she does, and the documentary on DAZN about Chelsea Women's is fantastic and really great insight to see how relentless she actually is and ruthless she is in terms of her decision making. And at times she actually has to be like that, and has to be like, we're at the top of our game, we have to remain there no matter what.
Yep, I love her. I got to my first experience with Emma was 2008. At the United Soccer Coaches Convention. I went to a training session of hers to watch and was just absolutely floored, and was lucky enough that a connection I had was good friends with her, and just to be able to watch her each year that she comes to the States and does these sessions for United Soccer Coaches. And I mean, I love watching what she does, and I love learning from her even more.
And that's what it's all about, continuous learning. And it's great that you had the opportunity to meet her and look at one of her sessions, because, in-person sessions, you can take a lot away from and really step back. And I know I was on a conference last year, or just slightly longer, and I remember seeing Yaya Toure deliver a coaching session and seeing that transition from, top Premier League footballer into coach. And a lot of people say, oh, you can't transition, or you don't always have the most successful coaches who transition across. But it was a really good, insightful session interesting to see how he would have applied that experience in terms of what he wants when he works with those players and what his expectations are and what he can take away. And there was a lot I really took across from all those sessions, which were really insightful to have, and it was great that you continue that way. But in terms of that conversation and around that, this buzz that's being created, I was reading a really good debate on Twitter the other day about whether the American League should start having this promotion and relegation, and that was quite an interesting debate to sort of read into.
Yeah, it's I'll admit, like when I first got into soccer, I was like diehard MLS. I didn't really pay much attention to English football or to Spain, and I still tell people this day, I will never forget the City Aguero goal. When that happened. And like you can't get that in sports here. And when the teams have been able to stay out of relegation zone, the scenes on the field of the all the fans coming out into the field from the stands, you don't get that with American sports. And I always liken it to I would say probably our biggest entity would be baseball, because we have like Major League Baseball, then you have minor league baseball and all of its divisions, and then we've got like fourth and fifth tier divisions of baseball. So I always try to liken it to that for my friends who aren't big soccer people. Like imagine if the Cincinnati Reds, like if they weren't good, they got demoted down to the minor leagues, and one of the best teams from the minor league was able to come up and take their spot. I was like, how cool would that be? And so it's I don't know you can do it in every sport in America, but I definitely think we're getting enough soccer teams. I think we could pull it off. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the way the MLS owner contracts are, I don't foresee it happening.
It's definitely an interesting concept, because that would change the entire regulation of the game. It would change the national pathway, the grassroots programs, how the players come in, the contracts, the money, the sponsorship. There would be so much that would have to really be put into an infrastructure that could pay off, might not pay off, but it is so interesting in terms of what you do in America, because I was speaking to a coach the other day who actually went out to America as a player, came back, and we were on about just the sheer amount of talent that is available in America and how good the recruitment days are. And when you go and have these weekends, showcase weekends, which is really good, and you're seeing players promote themselves continuously on Twitter, and just that whole vibe from the outside that I can see is truly fascinating. It's amazing that you have all of that in the US, and I think that's what we're really missing to take our real good academy level to the next level. And it's interesting that you might argue that some concepts are missing from the American game, maybe relegations or not. But I think where the game is going in America, I think, and I've said this to quite a lot of coaches that I've spoken to from the US, in 5 to 10 years, the US could be in the top 5 countries performing, because the amount of talent that you have right across the geographical location, and how the great game is growing, you're going to see players start to come through and have a national pool which is going to be endless.
Yeah, we just got to make sure that it's available for those kids. We got so many kids that are going missing because it costs too much for them to play. And so there's a growing amount of clubs that are, making it easier for kids to play. And they're still being able to take them to showcases and whatnot. So I do think that is the one thing that is still what's hurting us the most. I went to a really good seminar at the coaches convention. Eric Winalda had a piece called "Why Not Us?" And that was the big thing about, we're doing the right things. We're creating these pathways, but we are still missing so many kids who, his exact quote was, the next little Messi is right here in the States, but we're never going to know because it costs too much for him to play. So, I do believe that we are on the up, but I still think there's some things, like you said, structural place that we could change, and all of a sudden, my hope is that, I always say what I try to do now is to make the game better for that when my kids are older, we're at our top level. And I definitely do believe that by the time my children are a little bit older, I think the game here in America is going to be even bigger than what it is now.
Absolutely, and I love that in terms of that concept of making the game better for when they're older. I really, really love that. And it is massively going to grow because, you've already got that infrastructure, already got the facilities, there's more teams that are growing, as you say, there's more players being tapped into, the processes is changing, create more opportunities. And that's great because, we're sort of having that similar here in Wales. And it's quite interesting to sort of look what you're doing in the US and seeing what we're trying to do here with our new CEO in terms of the FAW. And it's great what we're trying to do from our infrastructure, which literally doesn't exist right now. And there was a sort of new academy category rating which came out earlier today. There's been a lot of opposition and there's going to be quite a few appeals. But it's really exciting to see from that outset in terms of what he's trying to do and what he's trying to put in place. And we're trying to tap into that talent because when you look at it, we're trying to compare ourselves with England. And England have this, amazing structure, much bigger geographical location, the Premier League. So they got endless amounts of money pumping through. We don't have that here in Wales. Our biggest team attracts, a crowd of 10,000. And that's not even a patch on, a top English club. So it's that interesting concept in terms of how that might look for us in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and the one that really, I still love it to this day, and I hate that their last World Cup ended the way it did, but I got so bought into Belgium and how they basically took a group of young kids and said, okay, this is the group that we're going to work with, and we're going to get this group to a final. And to see that process, I guess project again, to use the term, with your De Bruyne's, with your Lukaku's, that was so much fun to watch because, I guess geographically probably not as big as most countries, but for them to become a powerhouse, in the international game, shows that it can be done. You don't have to be the biggest country in the world to be really good. In fact, I would say that probably makes it harder because you are going to have those players who are going to slip through the cracks. But a country like Wales, I think what they're able to do is they're able to get the exact players because that pool is a little bit smaller. And I think that gives you a little bit more time to focus because here, especially now, here in the States, our biggest thing is, all right, who's got dual nationality that we can bring over that's, tearing it up in England or tearing it up in Spain, whatever. And that's kind of like our focus all the time. Now with Balogun right now, it's kind of the big thing is his recruitment. And you kind of get away from those who you currently already got. So Belgium just showed, like I said, they showed me that anybody can do it. You just gotta, to use your phrase, put the infrastructure in and stay committed to it and see it work out.
Absolutely, and it, that's relates back to what you're doing here and now, and it's great that you have taken what you're doing, the team to the championships and what you're doing there, and it's great that as you said, where you're at, it was known for the academic side, but not for the athletics. And now it's starting to look like, a place that is known for the athletics and what you're doing. So when you came in and, you had to instill what you said, part of the strategy and long-term thinking, when you came about in terms of maybe, your own philosophy, here's another key buzzword, is there a certain way that you deployed, or was it more about the people management and the people side of things and then looking at what you're doing on the field in terms of tactics, etc.?
Oh, man. I believe that it started with buy-in. When I started at Brescia, my first week with the girls, 3 days into that was when the lockdown started and everybody got sent home. And so I had to come up with new ways to do things that that none of us were used to doing. And so having to use, Zoom or FaceTime to talk with players and talk to them about buy-in and, not letting them actually see the progress for that buy-in to happen was a little difficult. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about the people. It's about who you bring in, who you have around it. We've got a really good staff that I think they do such a tremendous job. But I think, again, it all really comes down to our players. I think our players are the biggest piece of the puzzle because without them, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing currently. And it's not, it's not the level of players that we're bringing in now. I just think it's the players who have bought into wanting to turn this around. And that's kind of the thing that you'll hear the majority of them talk about is that, hey, we're going to turn this around. We're going to turn this around. We're not there yet, but we're going to turn it around. So I think the biggest piece to it all is the people. And it all kind of falls into place once you have the right people around you.
Absolutely. And in terms of that then, say, this season you might play a 4-2-3-1 and then next year you might play a 4-3-3 because of the people and what you have available to you. Is that something that you're looking at doing in terms of, the players might dictate how you change that, tactic and style? Or is it, trying to look at the style and then fit players into it in terms of that recruitment then? Are you a bit more free-flowing in terms of that?
I can be. I kind of made the call that next year I wanted to go to a 3-5-2 next year, and because I thought we would have the personnel to be able to pull it off. And we actually just randomly tried it this year at a kind of a slump in the season that we were having, and it changed everything. And our players bought into it, and we did it, and we excelled at it. So that's just another. It's just another formation that we know we can play. We've really built off of the 4-3-3. We've built off of a 4-5-1. And so, now that we've been able to add that 3-5-2 to it, the players are already going, okay, I think we need to stay in that for next year. So, that has kind of changed a little bit of our recruiting process. Okay, well, now this is what we're going to kind of move to for a while. These are the types of players that we need to bring in. But I think at the end of the day, you also got to be adaptable, and we want players that can adapt too. So whether it's a 3-5-2, a 4-3-3, 4-5-1, I've always been under the impression that the formation may always change, but the role that you have on the field doesn't. So we just have to make sure that we're bringing in players that understand those roles. That way, if that formation does change, we're still playing the way that we want to play.
And that's a really interesting concept because, I think that some coaches will say, their principles aren't interchanging, they're fixed and, players have to fit to that, and some vice versa, and they don't mind mixing up their principles to fit that. And it's good that you have, a bit more of a free-flowing state in terms of that. And when it comes down to, obviously, what you just said then, do you find that it makes your job easier? You can actually then just get down to working with the players and helping grow and develop then? Rather than, trying to hit the KPIs of play this way, play that way, this is philosophy and this has to be done that way. So, it actually then leads to you working with the players.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that, I'm a tactical wizard or anything like that. I'm really not. But I've got a pretty good grasp on things. I really, truly believe in fundamentals and the development of players. And I think that everything tactically comes along with that development. So I do focus a lot on individual player progression and things like that. And we've been able to say, like, with our system, no matter what formation it is, it is a free-flowing, free-thinking, you be creative type thing. And we really put that. Here in the States, we always talk about putting the ball in the player's hand. That's what we're essentially doing. We're saying, hey, here's how we're going to line up, but these things that we're asking you to do, if you do them, even as all these individual roles, that's going to make this whole thing work. So it does allow us to work a little bit more with the players. And we're not always working on, we're always having to worry about tactically related questions or things like that. Anything in life, I try to make it as easy as possible for people to understand. And I think that when you do the same thing with players, and you try to make maybe that visual success, or you try to make that whatever they may be working on, if you can make that easier for them, they're going to pick it up a lot faster rather than having to spend a whole week on the same session or the same topic. I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, I always hate, like, I'm the biggest person. Like, I will totally bash and make fun of myself more than anybody else, just because, like, I get it, and I do think that is where I do things a lot differently than people. To where I know that they focus on the systems and the things like that, but here it's that role versus position. That's everything to me. And I picked that up a few years ago when I was at the University of Evansville with head coach Mike Jacobs, who is now the general manager of Nashville SC in the MLS. And when we sat down one day and he went through this whole thing of roles over positions, it just started like clicking to me about stop worrying about trying to send players three different ways. Okay, hey, when your left winger has the ball, we need these four making these four different runs. Well, if the left winger has the ball, what would your role tell you to do? Do what your role tells you to do, and you're going to create those runs. And it may not be every run's the same. You'll find a player who may dip out to the left or hang up high, whatever it may be. And so I think the more creative freedom you can give a player, because one of the things is we teach players to be afraid to fail. And if you do fail, try it again, or find a different way. So I think when you have that ability to play that free form, creative, freedom, I guess, if you want to use that word, creative freedom that we give our players, you're going to see a lot more natural play as compared to stuff that, you and I have both seen goals that were like they worked on that whole build up for a week. These patterns and whatnot the players are playing, that they're passing, so for us to be able to have a little bit more free form, I think it makes it easier on the players. And again, that's just me.
And it's great that, when, I'm reflecting on it there and thinking about already next season in terms of my own team. And, what you're saying there really resonates, and just focus on the role. And if this is what your role is saying, then take away from that system. And that's a really interesting concept, which has got me thinking there. And I love the fact that you've brought that up.
Yeah, I don't bring up much. But, I think that's the thing that I get a lot of coaches that reach out to me and they're like, all right, hey, how do I do this coaching thing? How can I get to where you're at? And I'm like, I'm not the person to follow. I always say it's okay to do things the way you see them. If you focus more on the technical side than the technical side, that's okay. But how do you make that work? How do you fit those two together? But I've always thought that the whole roles versus position, like I said, I felt like for the last 10 years that was just like a really big thing. But you giving me hope that maybe I can get my name in the books for something.
No, definitely. I think that's definitely something that you can take away and really write about there. And I genuinely think there's something there for you to go away and definitely build upon. But it sounds great because when you've got a basis like this to really have your players take away. And as you said, you might not be the next tactician like Pep Guardiola, but you might be the people person. And as a coach, you might have something that you could contribute to a tactician who might be the head coach, and you could bring something really important. And when thinking about it, you could have 10 players which leave this year, and they can go fit into say 10 different systems because they've gone off on 10 different clubs or whatever. But you might have 2 or 3 players who have really taken from the mindset, from the positivity, from the mental work that you've done with them. And they're really going to, thrive and grow because of what you've done there, compared to, say, 3 or 4 who have been masterfully, built into being the next technical player to fit a system. Because, any player can go and fit a system and they can go and be coached technically. But then it's that real work in terms of that temperament, that mindset, the mentality that really takes them to the next level. So, if you're having that impact over 3 players in terms of mindset, etc., compared to, tactics of 4 or 5 players, I think you've had a bigger impact on the 3 rather than on those 4 or 5, because, as you said, those players can go anywhere and be coached by any coach to fit into any system, realistically.
Yeah, and that's always been my thing where, when I used to coach club, I'd work with high school age players. I'd say, what my job is that when we're done with our club season and you go to your high school team, your coach has to play you because you know what to do. Or they know that you're capable of doing what to do. And I've really kind of taken that now to our current players because, here at Brescia now, we do have players that are talking about continuing to play past college. And so what we want to do is to make sure that our players, it's the exact same thing. If a player does get picked up and maybe go overseas to play, or maybe they get picked up here to play, we want to make sure that that's a player that when they're there on day 1 of training camp, that head coach and that staff go, oh, she's from Brescia. Yeah, she knows what to do. We can throw her in right away. Or it's that, hey, this is somebody that we know if we need to call upon somebody, she's gonna be okay. So it's now taking that mentality to it of can we make our players, can we make them, I guess, quality enough that there will still be some things that they need to work on, but they could go to another team outside of college and continue playing without a problem.
And, that's what it comes down to is, that people management, that mindset, because you want to get them to break into teams because of where they're at, as you said, and get into those teams without any issues. And that's where it comes really down to, because you might do a recruitment event, you might see 10 technical players, but then you might see 2 or 3 players which you think, oh, their mentality will really fit what we're doing here. They're going to really contribute to the team. They're going to really bring this compared to, oh, we're going to have technical players this year. We got technical players next year. You're going to have that process of, technical players coming through. So, that mindset is really big. And when I reflect on it, I speak to my friend who was doing a PhD, and we were talking about, on the pitch coaches, we're starting to see a lot more set piece coaches, and they're starting to evolve. And then he was saying, in 10 years, he reckons there's going to be psychological coaches who are going to be on the pitch. So as much as we got psychologists who do things off the pitch, he's going to see, psychological coaches on the pitch. And when it really reflects and comes down to it, I look at myself and I'm like, am I a tactician? Am I this? Am I a technical coach? But when I come down to it, I know I'm realistically a person coach. And looking at some of our results this year, we have lost, and the data goes, right, that's not a successful season. But when you actually delve into it, we've actually lost 4-3, 2-1, 1-0. We've held off some of the better teams, and that's where that real character and temperament has come into, and that belief, and that has really helped us close off games and really fight rather than losing 5-0, 6-0. And that reflection doesn't look how it should be on the data, for example.
Yeah, I mean, since I've been here, I've always used the hashtag BTB, and it's for build the belief. And what you just talked about is really what we've seen in this transition over the last 3 years was, getting absolutely battered our first year, and then losing those games instead of losing them 8-0. Now we're losing them 4-1, or we're losing them 2-0. To where then this year we were winning those games 2-0, or we were winning those games by a lot, or maybe we lose 3-2. So that's such a cool thing to see. Like, it's hard for the players because they're like, oh, we still lost. And as a coach, you never back, well, last year we lost by 7-2. But you do think about that, and you think about, hey, this is how much progress we've had. And it's the celebrating those small goals will lead to the big goals that your team will achieve at some point.
Again, really love that hashtag, and another thing to take away and note it down there. But that that's what it comes down to, is those goals and what you can take away, and that knowledge which can really be built on. And when it comes down to, say, that recruitment and getting players in, and you're starting on a new season, you've got to do this transitional period. Is there anything that you do in terms of transitional, activities or team building, or a strategy that you deploy at the start of every season?
Yeah. Actually, let me blow my nose real quick. I'm going to mute this real quick so I can blow my nose.
No worries.
Because I know there was a couple points where I sounded like I was probably inside of a pool. But as far as team building goes, for this next coming year, we're actually doing our preseason in Sydney, Australia. We're taking our team to the Women's World Cup. While we're there, we're obviously going to do tourist stuff, but we're going to have a chance to work with Pete Nowakowski in his role. He's the assistant coach. Actually, he just changed. I think he's a director now for the Australian National Blind Football Program. But Pete's going to teach our players how to work with adaptive soccer players, because that's something that is a big adaptive soccer is something that's very big to me in terms of working with making sure that the game is for all, not just some. And I think that we have programs here in the States that are for disabled soccer, but there's still that competitive aspect of it. And that's why I really fell in love with over here we have a thing called Top Soccer, and it just makes the game available for anyone. No matter what their condition may be. And so for our players to be able to have that experience and be able to go back home and either start an adaptive soccer program or go into an adaptive soccer program in their community and say, hey, I've got this licensing from Australia about working with these players. Like I'd love to. We've got players who are special education majors who want to be special ed teachers, and I told them like, hey, this is a way to stay involved in the game. Like, yeah, you probably have no desire to coach, no desire to play after college, but here's a way to stay in the game and work with these great kids that you're going to be working with one day. So I think that's going to be really big for us going into this year. And as far as like team bonding stuff, like we just really keep it simple. Like I will really push game nights a lot. I like playing Uno with the girls. I like getting super competitive with it, and like to the point where we're like yelling about the rules of Uno because everybody's like, we can't really stack a +2, but you can because they let you do it on their online version of the game. But I truly believe that those team bonding activities have to be player driven. Because if they're driven by the coach, it's going to seem not real. Because, oh, hey, coach is telling us that we all got to get together. Coach is having us get together to do this. So I may, from time to time, suggest stuff to our players, like, hey, like, you guys should totally go do this. And then it's like, oh, yeah, we should. And they'll get in the group text, hey, Friday we're going to get together and go do this. Okay, yeah, sure. And there's that bigger response because it is peer driven. And I think, adding the Australia experience, plus the fact that a majority of our players will be upperclassmen this upcoming year, I'm looking forward to us having even more of those peer-driven activities that are going to bring our players together.
And I love that, and it's just got me reflecting on some of the preseason stuff that I'm going to do next year and hoping to do. And I love that you say player-led because, there's a lot that can be coach-led and it doesn't always pay off. And I'm just reflecting on that now when, we can really instill, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it's not always easy and players won't always respond to it. And if it's player-led, they're going to understand, they're going to integrate, they're going to take leadership roles, they're going to take a lot more from it. And I love that, what you said about getting individuals to remain in the sport. So even if they might not play or coach after college, how can they still remain in it? And that's something that I love. And when I've worked with my younger squad, who I gave up last year, it was all about succession planning for me and giving them that knowledge and knowing, all right, could they go and do the media side? Could they go and do coaching if they wanted to? Could they, do an analyst role? Could they do physiotherapy? Could they just have the ability to stay in the game after all these years of playing, even beyond when, I'm no longer coaching them, to stay part of it? Because, I think, and I see that with some of the players now who are getting jobs and working, who are now 19, 20, who I was coaching when they were 13, 14, 15. And some of them are on about just walking away from the game altogether. I'm like, we've been part of the academy program, you've been doing grassroots, you've been playing first team football. Your life for the last 20 years has been centered around football in some way, and you're willing to walk away from it altogether. I'm like, that is such a waste of time and talent. Just remain in it in some capacity. Don't throw it all away.
And isn't that the dream job? Kind of tying back to what we were saying earlier. It's about where you're at, what you're doing, but more importantly, who you're doing it with. And, I'm of the person that, I sit here and anytime that we have a match, there's some point during the game where I'm sure if the cameras were on me, you can see me just kind of like gazing because I truly am reflecting going, oh my gosh, I get to be a part of a game. That's my job. I get to come to this game twice a week, and then we train for these games the other days, and it's so cool to me that is an occupation. And it's so weird because when I was younger in high school, my coaches would always tell me, hey, you're gonna be a coach one day, and I never put two and two together that you could coach older people. I just always assumed coaching with younger ones. I was like, little kids are not my thing. It is no. But I had my very first training session as a coach when I was in college, and it was so bad that I went to my college coach was the director for coaching for the club, and I was just like, that sucks. I don't want to go through that again. So how do I get better at it? And I've just stayed with it. And I have this conversation with my wife so frequently is, people view what you and I do, we coach a game. That's all we do is we show up and we coach a game. But people don't really know what all goes into coaching that game. And, you hit on something earlier that I always talk about is I'm a massive relationship builder. I guess that comes back to it's about the people that are around you. And those relationships that you're consistently forging, consistently working on, at the end of the day, that's part of what we do. And to have our players still be involved in the game somehow, some way with whatever it is that they choose to do. You set a perfect example. We had a player this year that's graduating that's a graphic design major, and she was kind of thinking about wanting to make a portfolio to try to get a graphic design job. And I'm like, hey, sports graphic designs right now, like there are jobs everywhere, colleges, professional teams, no matter what the sport may be, but like there's tons of those jobs everywhere. And so she really kind of took a liking to that and like started making some like sport specific stuff, to where like I think that's kind of like her plan right now is to try to find some athletic team to be involved in and use her to breed for that. So to be able to help players stay involved long after our time has come and gone, much like yourself and mine, that's how we give back to the game. That's how we're paying it forward. To this game that I've always said, this game has given me so much. And so if that's the thing that I can do is to keep that game growing within people, and then that's what it's all about. And the fact that now I've got 2 children of my own who play, it's kind of full circle a little bit. And now, like I said earlier, now the idea is, all right, how can I help change the game to make it better for them? Because at the end of the day, as a coach, you're basically a teacher. Just the classroom is different, and everything that you do has to have those kids in the best interest. And so, somebody told me one time that you have to, when you want to take bigger leadership roles in soccer, when you want to do board of directors and things like that, you got to have a selfish thing. And my thing's always been, I just want to make the game better for all kids. That's all I want to do. And if I have to make things better for coaches to get it better for the kids, then that's what I'm going to strive to do. But I guess what I've come to figure out is, I guess to say selfishly, if I can make the game better for my own 2 children, then in turn I've made the game better for all children. And I think that there are ways that we can continue doing that in our country. And I think there's ways we can continue doing that in the world. But I do think that it starts with having some type of way that every single one of those players that you are involved with still have a tie to the game somehow. Like I actually just yesterday was texting with a former player I coached in high school, 12 years ago maybe. And he wasn't much into professional soccer when he started playing. And he became a Chelsea fan when I started coaching him. And the fact that he and I will still have conversations through text about how badly the team has played this year and, how in shambles the club is. He's not playing still, or he's not coaching and things like that, but he is still involved in the game just from a different perspective. And to me, like, that's one of the most satisfying things is the fact that these players are still watching the game or they're coaching. And, how many of my former players are coaching their own kids in, little youth leagues. That to me at the end of the day is what getting to do this game is all about.
Absolutely, and it's so great there because, as you said, you're not, coaching young kids is not for you. But realistically, you're not having a direct impact, but you're having that indirect impact because of the great work that you're doing with the individuals. Because they're going to go on and they might be coaches and work with the kids, and then they're developing kids because of what you've instilled. So essentially, in a way, then you're going to become the godfather of football in that own sense.
I don't know if I can run with that nickname, but I really wish it would work. I did get the opportunity to coach my daughter a couple of years ago, only because my wife volunteered me without me knowing. And I do admit it was a little bit of fun. And I think because it was like one day a week and then, the other day that we played. But, selfishly, I think it was because I got to work with my own daughter and coach her. My son, on the other hand, I don't know that I could coach him for a while. Because I used to always say, like, I would coach my kids when they got significantly older, maybe high school, junior high, something like that. But I have found myself taking in so much of their development and just like wanting to be a part of that process without being a part of it. I guess if that sounds weird, like I'm not that dad that like forces them to go outside, throw cones down, and do activities. Like not my thing. Like if you don't want to work on it, I'm not gonna make you do it. But I do like, there's a park right by our house, and I like when my daughter says like, "Hey, can we go practice shooting?" Absolutely, because all we do is we shoot, we score, and we dance. Like that's how we work on it, and that's something that I really enjoy about that development with her. But again, like I said, it's also caused me to look at this whole pathway thing because of like where I'm from, we don't really have like we have a pathway to get to college soccer if you're in a club, but there's no pathway to potentially playing on beyond college. So the fact that our daughter plays about an hour and 45 minutes from where we live, and the fact that they have this pathway from grassroots all the way to a first team professional team, it has opened up her eyes, and she sees that now, and that's like her. It's so funny because she'll be 9 in a couple of weeks, and she will tell you like her goal is to play Power 5 soccer and potentially play professionally. But she wants to play professionally just to do it for fun, and then go to medical school to be a doctor. And I know if she wasn't in that environment at Racing Louisville and their academy program, I don't know that would be her long-term plan. But for her to be around the first team players, the Jessica McDonald's, and Jalen Haas, the Savannah DeMellos, to consistently be around those players and see like, oh hey, like this is their job. They get to play this game that I love playing, and it's their job. Like that's what I want to do. So that's really opened me up now when it comes to grassroots pathways, to where I don't know that I could coach grassroots, but it would be pretty cool to be a part of that grassroots program, because I thought it was last year, as a 7-year-old, my daughter having an IDP meeting, so individual development plan, but seeing how she took that plan to heart and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it made me realize, okay, well maybe other younger ones should be doing something like this. So I think maybe at some point when it's all said and done, and maybe like when my kids are my age, maybe I think I am a little bit more in that grassroots by that time. Because my wife will tell you, she's a middle school principal, and she'll tell you that I act like her kids in school a lot, just because I've never grown up. So maybe as I get older, I'll kind of drop down and get in with the younger ones, and I'll be the one playing foxtails and oh gosh, now I can't think of half of the ones that we do, like when we do camps and stuff like that. But maybe that's where we end up one day, because in this game you never know. I would have never thought that I'd be coaching in college 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and it's just so cool how you can be a part of the game at so many levels.
Absolutely, I love that, and hopefully you can enjoy doing foxes and tails and the fishes and what's the time, Mr. Wolf, and all those things in a couple of years to come, and take you away from the tactical side of the 4-2-3-1s and breaking lines and switching play. But that's the way it is, and I know that I sort of done some TOTS coaching when I first started, and I look back on like my own 16-year-old self, and I'm like, I used to do those sessions with such ease. And a couple of years ago, I went back into a much more experienced coach, but I was like, oh, I don't want to do this again. And I only done it for like 1 week, and then I was like, only call me on the absolute last resort, because this is not where my temperament or mindset is at now. I was like, that was 8 years ago doing that. I was like, my whole, experience and where I've been since then has completely changed.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that thing of wanting to make the game better for all kids. And I do think that when you get, for all the parents out there, when your own child is involved in playing, you do take a little bit more into it. And so now I've looked at it as, okay, well, how can I get, my daughter's friends that go to her school that play for our local club teams, they're all asking her, like, they want the same experience that she's getting. And so it's like, could I do something that can help those girls get the same experience as her, maybe from a little bit more local perspective? But, at the end of the day, it's just the fact that we get to sit here and roll out a ball and have some fun, 2 hours a day, or for full-time coaches, obviously, you're in the office or at home and you're creating your session and things like that. It still is just super wild to me that like this is what we get to do.
And we, love it, and that's where we get to put the passion back onto the pitch. But it's great that you're involved in coaching full-time and you're happy in doing that, and, that you're enjoying what you do, because when you are enjoying what you do, time passes so much quicker than when you don't do it. And that's the current reflection which I'm at, and that's what I was talking to you about earlier, about that long-term planning, because I'm always looking at the long-term plan, and sometimes I forget about the here and now, and it sticks me about enjoying here and now. So where I was at a couple of years ago, I would be accelerating myself a lot more than I am now, and I've taken a bit more of a pace, some pace off what I'm doing now, just to enjoy what I'm doing, enjoy being young, and not rush through and then then be 30, 40, 50, but just to go, oh, do you know what, I can actually remember what I'd done at 26, 27, 28, because a couple of years ago, I can't remember what I was doing, but work. And as much as it's helped me progress in certain ways, it's taken off what personal memories are like. And I was saying to my best mate the other day, I was like, we're almost 30, and realistically, when we look back, what are we going to say we've done? We're like, oh, we've done a couple of things at 18, 19, but then we've just worked and not really enjoyed the personal life around it.
Yeah, and that's it. You hit the nail on the head about time flies. Like I'm just a couple of years away from doing this more than half of my life, and that is so beyond weird to me. Like my very first time coaching was when I was 17, a senior in high school, and I went and helped my mom's friend with her little U6 youth league team, and started coaching every year after that. I've coached every year after that, and to sit here and look and say that I've spent a majority of my life being involved in this game that has given me so much. It's just absolutely it's a blessing. It's an honor, and the thing I love the most is that because of technology, it's allowed me to connect with other people who feel the same way. Obviously, like you're with yourself or with other people on podcasts that we've met through our own. This is the time where I'm really enjoying being in the now as a coach, because I know, 16, 18 years ago, I wouldn't say that I was fully enjoying it, but I was learning to enjoy it. As compared to now, I truly, even if we have a bad session, we have a bad game, I still love the fact that I got to do that day. But again, too, I think the thing that's added to that is just the networking and connections I've been able to make because of this cool thing called the internet and social media, to be able to connect with all these great coaches out there who, Nick and I, we always joke about Soccer Chat is we just made it so that we can take other people's ideas and probably not execute them to the way that they do, but it's just a way for us to get better as coaches. And I am so thankful with the people I've met who have had some type of impact on me as a coach, whether they know it or not. And it's just the coaching community is just such a, with what you're doing and the coaches that you're having on and giving them a platform. I know you had my boy Spencer Sandow on, not too long ago, and just the fact that we're now able to get these really good coaches who people may not know or have heard of, giving them a platform to talk about how they do things and their teams, and you draw that interest and go, oh, I want to know more about this guy, or I want to know more about what her team is doing. It's so cool to me, and I don't know how we all got to this point, but here we are, and it's so cool.
And I love it. And, as I said, the long-term planning, at no point when I was 16, 17, had I long-term planned to do a podcast or do any of this. This is just something that I fell into from falling into coaching as well myself.
Yeah, I always tell people, me doing a podcast is just me actually using my college degree since I was a broadcasting major. So all those years that my mom was mad at me for not using my degree, I used the podcast to say, hey, here it is. This is I learned to do this in college, so now I'm doing it for real. But I think too, as you get older, those long-term plans change. I used to have aspirations of going to specific places and whatnot, but like I said, in the last 2 years, I just really believed in the dream is where you make it. And then if you surround yourself with the right people, the old adage of, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I think that kind of goes in point with the dream job.
Absolutely, and that's somewhere where I'm currently at right now. And when it comes down to where I'm at and what I'm doing and where I want to go long term, I ended up, I'm currently 6 months into a job and just gone into the 7th month, and I'm a few months away from, a couple of months away from the 6 weeks holiday that we have here for summer break, and I'm contemplating, what next year is going to look like academically, how this might work in terms of coaching and everything else that's going on. And I'm like, am I at a stage where now I want to move on because I've completed this project? And that's where the motivations come in, and enjoying where I'm at and what I'm doing. And and this is something that I've never explored as a 16, 17-year-old, was going into that media or broadcasting route or speaking to people. And I'm at a point now where I'm really enjoying this, and sometimes more than the coaching aspect. And I'm like, do you know what? Could I actually move away from that and go into this? Because this is where I'm at, and it's great to have people like you on and have these discussions and just listen and take back and be away from the coaching side of it and just see from the outside rather than being in the middle of it at the time that I have been.
Yeah, I there were times where I'm like, man, like I enjoy doing the podcast more than I enjoy coaching. But at the end of the day, we all know that that's not true. But you do, again, it's that finding a way to stay involved in the game because one day you may decide, all right, I'm done coaching, I'm going to get out. But because you've got this platform that's going to keep you connected, it all comes back to that. Maybe this is your long term plan that you just never knew. It popped up and it's introduced itself to you, and here you go.
Absolutely, and let's see where life goes. But I know you're busy. I know that your family are waiting for you, and you got a wedding to go to tomorrow. So I am going to let you go. But before I do, I'm going to throw a couple of quick fire questions at you, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fab. If you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
Oh, positive, energetic, passionate.
Love it. Great words. You might have already hinted at this one, but if you could move to any country to go and coach in, what country would it be?
That's a tough one. Obviously, I mean, the historical factor of England and the United Kingdom is massive. Also, I don't know that I could learn another language, even if I got paid to. My brain doesn't work that way. I almost, when I was in college, I almost ended up going to Sweden to play. And the thing that kept me from it was the fear of having to learn another language. But I think 5 years ago, I would have always said England. But now, because of the people I've gotten to meet, I would probably say some other countries. But I would say like Australia or in England would definitely be like the top 2 for sure.
Good choices, good choices. If you could spend a day with any coach, you might have already answered this, but any coach or manager, who would it be?
Jose Mourinho.
Good answer.
He is he's somebody that I've always looked to. I tell people all the time, my top 2 coaches are Mourinho and Ancelotti. I've taken so much from both of them, and to be able to sit down and just talk with him, because the thing I love about him is he's a showman. Like, yeah, he's a coach, but he's a showman as well. And unfortunately, I am kind of the same way. I'm still celebrating the goals when we score them. I don't, that doesn't matter to me. I'm not playing anymore, but I'm still going to celebrate them. So yeah, I would have to say Mourinho for sure.
Love it. Top answer. My favourite one of all the answers that come out whenever I ask them that one. If you could take any job in the world of manager, what job would it be?
Ooh. I think there's nothing better than being able to coach for your country. To be involved with the U.S. program somehow, some way would be like kind of, I guess, that dream. But at the end of the day, I think it'd be cool to work at Chelsea, especially in their youth academy. I think is so brilliant. And my new interest in that grassroots, I would love to see how they do things over there. Because their youth teams are ridiculously sick. So I think those would kind of be the 2. Obviously here in America, we've got some really good college teams and things like that. But I think at the end of the day, if you had a magic wand, I would say make me the manager of the U.S. team, because I feel like I could lead us to the World Cup in 2026.
I think you're the first American coach that I've spoken to who would actually take the American job, because a lot of them I've asked that question to, and they're like, oh, United or, the American team. And when I've come down to it, I said, right, you've got this choice and you have to pick one or the other. And they tend to go for the club side rather than the national side. So, I think the job's there for the taking.
Yeah, so it's so funny. I had Jay DeMerit's a buddy of mine that played for the U.S. national team, and I had him on our show during the coaches convention, and we were talking about him and some of the former players. They got their little group text of like, all right, who could coach? Of our group, could we pull it off? And he and I talked at length about it of separating of like having a manager, the person who's going to control the personalities, but then having like, your goalkeeper coach, but then having like to use American terms, to have like a defensive coordinator, to have a like offensive coordinator who like their focus is just on one side of the ball rather than having somebody who's having to, to get everything. So I think if I got the U.S. job, I think that if I called Jay, I think we could put a pretty cool staff together. Not even cool. We put a really dope staff together, and we would bring back some pride into our U.S. men's national team, because our team would be full of dogs, and when dogs get out there and play, it's really hard to stop them. So I think that, yeah, I don't know who wouldn't want to coach for their country. Maybe the pressure of it, but to me, I mean, there's no greater opportunity than to coach your own country.
I love that, and I love what you say, dope and dog. I think
the dogs.
Yeah, I love that.
We, Jay and I when we had that conversation, we were just talking about the current team, and it just dawned. We said something like, we don't got enough dogs on the team, and we just we're like, oh my gosh, that's it. Like, we need more dogs. Because here in the States, you always hear about, they got that dog in them when it comes to, the top players. So I think that we, in a 45-minute, hour conversation that he and I had, I think we mapped out a pretty good succession plan that I feel like we could pull it off.
You never know. So it's, best of luck in terms of you pulling that off, and hopefully you can instill a national philosophy there.
You know what? If that ever happens, you're the first person I'm going to call and say that this is all your fault.
I'll look forward to that call, and it'll be such a pleasure to take it. Going back to your younger self then, and being at a stage where you could decide to be a full-time professional footballer or a full-time professional coach, which one would you go with?
It would have been cool to play. I attempted for about 2 weeks to play post-college before rupturing my Achilles tendon, and I don't live with regrets, but knowing what I know now, I would have to say I would have loved to have played professionally. I was never supposed to play in college, and I did, so I think that just would have been another thing for me to add to my life of like, oh, watch what I'm going to do now, and people just shake their head. So I would definitely say, I think if you were a player, you would say the opposite, because you don't coach, so you want to see what that would be like. So I think, being a full-time coach now, I would totally want to be the pro player.
Love it. And if you had to say the one thing you enjoyed most about coaching, what would it be?
Relationships. To be lucky enough to get to work with the kids that I've been able to work with, the families that I've gotten to meet, that's the best part of it. It's not the wins and losses. It's seeing these kids graduate, going to their weddings, seeing them having families of their own. That's the trophy in all of this. So I've never admitted to coaching because of the winning. I've always coached because of the relationships that you get to build from it.
And there we are. Well, I appreciate your time, and I've had such a great time speaking to you. I'm glad we could get this organised and get it on. And as you were talking, I've taken so many notes, and I'm going to play it back and continue to take it. But honestly, there are so many great little snippets which I've taken away and that have got me thinking. But I appreciate your time, and I know, especially as your wife might give you an ear bashing about being late, and you've got to prepare for a wedding and all that. But I do appreciate it, and honestly, it's been a pleasure to have met you, and it's a big thanks from me for coming on.
Oh man, anytime, and it's I tell everybody, like, when we do our own podcast or if I hop on others, like, we're connected now, we're friends, my man. So anytime you need something, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for having me on, being able to talk about our program and kind of the way that we do things here. And I think what you're doing is really good for schools and teams like ourselves that maybe don't get as much media attention as we do, but I just want to thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure, and I really appreciate it, and likewise for you, and I'm glad that we could have built this connection, and enjoy tomorrow, and good luck, and definitely stay in touch, but thanks again.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for everything.
Pleasure. No worries. Thank you.
We'll see ya.
See ya.